My name is Josh Levin, and I'm an attorney at the ACLU of Illinois. It is a pleasure to be with you to celebrate CRS's 140th Annual Membership Assembly. The ACLU of Illinois has had the privilege of working hand in hand with CRS for over 5 years to advocate for transformational changes to policing in Chicago. I want to take a moment today to tell you a bit about the history of these efforts, where they stand today, and the impact that CRS is having in its tireless fight for justice in policing. In 2017, CRS joined the ACLU of Illinois and a number of other Chicago-based community organizations, including Communities United, One Northside, and Next Steps, to file a federal lawsuit against the city of Chicago. This lawsuit challenged the police department's pattern of using excessive and racially discriminatory force against Black and Latinx residents and people with disabilities. After we filed our lawsuit, CRS, the ACLU, and our partner organizations negotiated a historic agreement with the city and the Illinois Attorney General. We obtained a pivotal role in developing and enforcing a federal consent decree, which is a court order that requires the Chicago Police Department to make sweeping changes. This consent decree, which took effect in 2019, was the product of decades of protest, community organizing, and legal advocacy against the deep-rooted racism, brutality, and lack of accountability in the Chicago Police Department. The consent decree requires wide-ranging structural reform to address unsafe and biased policing. This includes restricting officers' use of force, requiring unbiased policing and prohibiting racial profiling, establishing crisis intervention and non-police responses for people in mental health crisis, and strengthening systems that will hold officers accountable for wrongdoing, aiming to end CPD's corrosive cover-up culture. These wide-ranging reforms require CPD to overhaul policies, training, supervision, and data collection in order to ensure that officers change and improve how they interact on the ground with community members, in particular people of color and people with disabilities. CRS and its coalition partners have played a central role in reforming CPD under the consent decree. Our central goal is to make sure that the communities that have been most impacted by violent and discriminatory policing directly shape transformative changes to policing in Chicago. Our coalition is comprised of more than a dozen organizations. We represent the diverse tapestry of Chicago's communities, spanning racial, religious, LGBTQ, disability, and geographic differences. Together, we evaluate new CPD policies and trainings, engage the community to provide recommendations for improvements, negotiate with CPD officials on policy changes, and advocate before the independent monitor and the federal judge who oversee the consent decree reform process. CRS staff and leaders have been instrumental in strengthening relationships between organizations in the coalition by promoting dialogue and joint organizing efforts. And I want to emphasize how incredibly powerful it is and how grateful we are to have Dr. Middleton's voice in our meetings with police officials. She speaks truth to power. She cuts through bureaucratic indifference. She confronts city officials with the daily realities of the Black and brown community members who disproportionately bear the brunt of police abuse and police indignity. While the consent decree process has been frustratingly slow, we are also seeing real progress. For example, our coalition has long called for an end to the kind of dangerous police foot chases that resulted in the tragic police killings of Anthony Alvarez and Adam Toledo. Last month, in response to our advocacy, CPD adopted for the first time a policy that heavily restricts those foot chases and makes it more likely that officers will be held accountable for them. And due to our advocacy, the final policy no longer has a provision that would have allowed for racial profiling in foot chases. Another success is the coalition's advocacy to address police mistreatment of protesters. After witnessing the brazen, violent attacks by Chicago police against the scores of Chicagoans who protested George Floyd's murder, we engaged in months of advocacy and negotiation with the city to reform CPD's policy on police interactions with protesters. Under the new policy, officers will no longer be able to use pepper spray against nonviolent protesters and must always give a verbal warning first. And officers must ensure that any order to disperse is communicated in ways that everyone can understand, including people with disabilities and limited English proficiency. These and many other achievements are the direct result of the unwavering determination and coalition building by CRS and its community partners. We at the ACLU are proud to partner with you. On behalf of everyone at the ACLU, congratulations on this remarkable 140th AMA and on CRS's world-changing work fighting for policing that is fair, just, and equitable.